Hello my friends, this is part 2 in a series of videos on bipolar disorder. We are now diving into the details of the astrology of bipolar disorder. What are the things in the birth chart that make a person vulnerable to bipolar disorder? And what we started to introduce is 7 vibration. 7 vibration is one of the key factors that makes a person vulnerable, makes it there's a potential to develop bipolar disorder. So let's look at this 7 vibration, and specifically it's Saturn involved in 7 vibration with particular planets. So that's the key thing. Saturn is aspecting particular planets. I'll talk later about what those planets are in 7 vibration, or what we call overtones of 7 vibration, specifically octaves. There are different kinds of overtones. One is octaves, just like in music. And it's very simple. You take sevenths of a circle. So here we're looking at one of 912 people in this database of people who have bipolar disorder. This is number 129 of 912. And what I've drawn into the birth chart in purple are these aspects that are sevenths. I'm just picking up with where we left off in the first video. So Pluto, Sun, Moon, and Uranus are in these seventh aspects. And what I started to explain at the end of the first video of this series is this vibrational chart, also called a harmonic chart. It's such a fabulous thing. What it does is it takes the 4 planets and makes them conjunct. It takes the sevenths and spreads it out so everything that's a seventh of a circle becomes together, conjunct. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the 7 vibration chart, and we're going to see that Pluto, Sun, Moon, and Uranus will be together. They will collapse together. So what the 7 vibration chart does is it shows us planets that are in 7 vibration. So let's look at it. There they are. The Sun, Moon, Uranus, and Pluto are now together. We call that conjunct. Now, why are Sun and Moon? Sun is at 18, Moon at 19, Uranus at 21. They're all pretty close together. And then a little bit farther away is Pluto. Does that mean something? Yes. A beautiful thing about the vibrational chart is we can see the orbs, how far from exact. In other words, the Sun and Moon are nearly in a perfect seventh, either a 1/7, 2/7, or 3/7. And we don't really care that much. This is an interesting thing. We don't really care that much whether it's 1/7, 2/7, or 3/7. What we care about is that they're in some kind of 7. That's a 7 vibration. Yes, there is a difference between 1/7, 2/7, and 3/7, but it's relatively minor. The fact is they're in sevenths, and by looking at the 7 vibration chart, we can see that Sun and Moon are very tightly in 7 vibration. Uranus also tight. Pluto, not quite as tight. How much tolerance, we call it orb, do we allow? This may sound enormous, but we allow up to 16 degrees. Up to about 8 or 10 degrees is solid. You get above about 12 degrees, it's getting weak. Obviously, the closer they are, the stronger they are. And that's a very strict rule in this system of astrology that I use, which we call cosmic cybernetics, we sometimes call vibrational astrology. And it's this system of astrology that was confirmed in the research. So Sun, Moon, and Uranus are in a very tight 7 connection. Pluto, also pretty solid. It's within the 8 to 10 degrees. From 26 minus 18 is 8 degrees. About 8 degrees is the whole thing spread. It's there. Now, notice Mars, over here at 16 degrees, is opposite the Sun, Moon, and Uranus, particularly Sun and Moon, pretty tightly. We allow half the orb for the planet opposite, so we allow an 8-degree orb. So Mars is opposition Sun, Moon, and Uranus, pretty solidly. That means that Mars, being in a 2 aspect, opposition 1/2, is actually in a 14 vibration. So what we can do is we can look at the 7 vibration chart, look at the conjunctions, planets together, opposition, any planet square, and that is actually the 7, 14, 28. And planets that are what we call semi-square, 45 degrees or 135 degrees, 3/8 are actually in 56. So this is the bottom line. If you're new to this, that may sound overwhelming. If you're familiar with this, you already know it. But all you need to know is this. All you need to know is that you're going to look at planets that are together, conjunct, opposition, square, or eighths in the 7 vibration chart, and they incline to introversion, especially if Saturn's involved. So what we see here is that Saturn is not involved. Here's Saturn over here at 6 degrees Taurus. No red lines. These aspects I'm talking about are drawn in red. The stronger they are, the thicker the lines are. So you can see all these aspects are strong. So when we look at this, it appears right now that this is not super introverted. Yes, the sun and moon, which are fundamental, they're involved, but Saturn is not involved. Now here's one of the things we discovered in the research. We had the basic idea of what we expected. We expected 7 vibration could be involved with Saturn. Why did we expect it? Because we had found it in the introversion, extroversion research. And when we found out that the bipolar is a combination of an introverted side and an extroverted side, that made sense. But here is one of the things that we did not particularly anticipate, which is that when we do a 7 aspects in the 7 vibration, like a fractal thing, we're going to take 7ths of the 7ths, which in other words is 49 vibration. So in addition to the octaves of 7, 7, 14, 28, 56, 7s of 7s are also very powerful, because when we draw in the 7ths, which I'm drawing in purple here, we find that Saturn is in a 7 vibration, means it's a 1/7, 2/7, or 3/7. I can tell by the distance, that looks like it's probably a 2/7, but it doesn't really matter. Saturn has got these purple lines to Sun, Moon, and Uranus. There it is, Saturn to Sun and Moon, which is exactly what we saw in the introversion-extroversion study, was Sun-Saturn. But instead of being in 7 vibration, it's in 7 times 7. This is so totally cool. It's just very, very cool because it's fractal. So when you take 7s of a 7, and it was 49 vibration, you also get a similar effect. So our rule becomes this: Saturn aspecting particular planets, one of which is the sun. I'll talk more about that later, probably. This is going to be a series of videos. There's a lot to learn here. But Saturn in aspect of particular planets, one of which is the sun, in 7, 7 times 2, 7 times 4, 7 times 8, or 7 times 7, inclines to extreme introversion. And if there's also one of the manic configurations, then the person can become bipolar. So there it is, Saturn connecting to the Sun, Moon, Uranus. Now let's go back. Even though Saturn is not involved in this configuration, it's also going to add to the introversion quality. It's got this person has a huge 7 vibration pattern involving both the Sun and Moon. That's going to give strong 7 vibration. But to make it really conspicuous, you want Saturn involved. So that's the rule. Saturn involved in 7, 7 times 2, 7 times 4, 7 times 8, or 7 times 7 inclines to bipolar disorder if there's also a manic configuration. So that's what it is. Excuse me. So that is one part of the formula. Now, what about the manic? So here it is. I have it in bold at the top of this slide. Just as Saturn in 7 vibe inclines to extreme introversion, Uranus in 11 vibe inclines to poor impulse control. So 7 vibration is quiet. Saturn removes things. Saturn in 7 vibration is like a double whammy. That's going to be highly introverted. 11 vibration is the most unstable vibration. 11 and the overtones of 11. And based on what we saw with 7 vibe, the overtones we're expecting that might be involved will be 11 times 2, 11 times 4, possibly 11 times 8, maybe 11 times 11. We're expecting, or we can put it this way, it would be very elegant, it would be a very beautiful formula if Uranus in 11 vibration and octaves of 11 and 11 times 11, if those incline to have low impulse control and therefore lead to these manic episodes where the person's just wild and out of control, we have a nice, elegant formula that makes us suspect that possibly this is working. So in data mining, what we're doing here is we're doing data mining. We're looking into the data, trying to see what's going on. Some people have this notion that, well, you just look for anything going on in the data. Excuse me. It's not that simple. You want theoretical support. You want something elegant and compelling. Elegant and compelling would be that you have principles that you apply in a consistent way and it works. You're seeing that this is showing up with people with bipolar. That's what we found. So I want to emphasize that some people just want to look at the statistical test at the end of the hypothesis test and use that as the only criterion for whether we have confidence in the formula. There's much, much more than that. And these steps along the way that build our model are very compelling. They make us think, wow, this might work. If we cannot apply an elegant, consistent set of configurations, then we're more skeptical. It's just a matter of, does this feel good? Are we gaining confidence? Are we developing a model that really is theoretically consistent and internally simple? So what we're going to see is that the Uranus in 11 vibration does incline to the manic episodes, and it did occur, or does occur, more often in these 912 people, and it was confirmed with new data. So let me make another point before I continue about how this astrology works according to our model. It's not a simple as above, so below. What it is, let's read the second paragraph. The aspect patterns are like radio stations that we tune into. Oh, sorry about that. Let me say that again. These aspects, these 7 vibration, 11 vibration aspects, what are they doing? How do they incline the person to become bipolar? Is it just as simple as above, so below? What's going on? The way we understand it is that these vibrational patterns in the cosmos are setting up a resonance with the person. And they're setting up an environment of a communication environment. So our mind, it's like our thoughts are not generated by the brain. We think of the brain as a radio station that picks up and processes thoughts. The brain is not creating thought, the brain is receiving and processing and integrating and developing thoughts. So the 7 vibration is setting up a message, a frequency in the universe that your brain detects and processes. So, to read this last sentence in the second paragraph, when the person tunes into the 11 vibration, and if you're born with 11 vibration aspects, you have no choice but to have that radio station. Those signals are coming into you. And as you receive those signals, you start processing this energy, which becomes a thought, and it becomes an energetic process in your body, in your whole life, to be spontaneous and wild. You're getting that signal, and you're going to respond to it in some way. You may repress it, you may project it, you may fight it, you may just do it. In some way or another, you're dealing with that force, and you have to respond to it in one way or another. And in the last paragraph I say, when tuned into 7 vibration, there can easily be a tendency to view one's wild moods as being childish, immature, unpolished, and unsophisticated. So I referred to this in part 1 of this series of videos as well, that there's a war that develops between the 7 vibration signals that the person receives and the 11 vibration signals. They end up at war with each other. Do they need to be at war with each other? Absolutely not. But that's what happens. So when the person tunes into their 11 vibration and they start getting wild and out of control, and then later they tune into their 7 vibration views their 11 vibrations side of themselves as childish, immature, unpolished, and unsophisticated. So what happens is we have all these different signals, all these different messages, all these different energetic qualities that are trying to express themselves through us. They're working their way into our system, and we respond to it in various ways. And you can see how, if you have very strong 7 vibe, and you have very strong 11 vibe, particularly if you have Saturn in 7 vibe, extreme, and you have Uranus in 11 vibe, oh my God, you have something that's literally bipolar. It's bipolar. You've got the extreme quiet, the extreme lack of impulse control, wanting to be spontaneous. Now you can manage it, you can do it well, but you can imagine for certain people, they're just not going to come into sync with each other. So what we're seeing in this style of astrology is energetic processes and how people respond to them. And what's beautiful about this too is that the therapy, what people need to do is very clear. We can see the signals, we can see what's happening, we can see them struggling with it, and we can see a path forward for how to improve their relationship to these signals that they're receiving. So now, this is the same person, number 129 of the 912 people who have bipolar disorder. And again, I'm using this to illustrate the ideas. Picking out one chart out of 912 that fits the theory, anybody can do that. What we found in the research is that this does occur more often with people with bipolar disorder than people who do not have bipolar disorder. So we're building a model that fits the data. Does building a consistent, solid model that fits the data absolutely prove, as people like to say, that the astrology works? No, but this is how science advances. It advances by building solid models, applying them, testing them, and evaluating them. It's a slow process. So I'm showing you how this model, when applied to charts, what it feels like, what the experience is of a therapist who would be using this information, what it would be like. In the later videos in this series of videos on bipolar disorder, I will go through more of the technical details of the research methods and what was found. But first I decided I wanted to give you a feeling for what this looks like. So in this person's 11 vibe chart, we're looking at the 11 vibe chart of the same person who has that very strong 7 vibe. We see that Mercury over here and is square Uranus in the 11 vibe chart, not in the natal chart. So that means it's in an 11 times 4. These, what we call hard aspects, conjunctions, oppositions, squares, we call semi-square, 45 degrees, sesquiquadrat, we call 135 degrees, and the 11 times 11. These are the ones we suspect could lead to impulse control or spontaneity. It doesn't have to be, when we say lack of impulse control, that's negative. A positive attribute of it would be the ability to improvise, to be spontaneous, like a jazz musician who's improvising. And we can see the way forward. People who lack this impulse control might find constructive ways where their ability to innovate and be spontaneous can be expressed constructively. And by looking at the planets and exactly what's going on, we can see in what ways they can do this. So in this individual's case, We see Mercury and Uranus square to each other in the 11 vibe. And is it a tight pattern? The smaller the orb, the clearer the signal. Imagine you have an old-fashioned radio where you turn the dial to pick up the station. When the aspect is exact, it's like you turn the dial, bam, right on the radio station. Like perfect, clear signal. So this Mercury at 23 degrees, almost 24 degrees, weight 23 degrees, and Uranus at 24.5 degrees. We allow a 4-degree orb for these aspects. It's tight. It's super tight, and we don't even need to look at that. We just look at the thickness of the line. And then we see Mars making these hard aspects. These are the 3/8 aspects. You have a Mars, Mercury, Uranus configuration. And in addition to the aspects, it is symmetrical. This is another big deal in this vibrational astrology system. If the pattern is symmetrical, it's more powerful. So Mars is symmetrically in between Mercury and Uranus and in these hard aspects. Wow. That's big. It's especially when we have 3 planets, not just 2, that we get a very strong effect. So to read from this slide, this person has 2 overlapping planetary configurations. In addition to the Mars opposite the Mercury and Uranus, making this configuration, Jupiter is connected to Mercury and Uranus as well. So there's the Mercury and Uranus connected with Mars, and Mercury and Uranus are connected with Jupiter. We consider it to be 2 overlapping patterns because you'll notice there is no red line between Mars and Jupiter. So it's not a 4-planet configuration, it's 2 overlapping patterns. And one of the ideas in this system of cosmic cybernetics is that this diagram that we're looking at is a wiring diagram. What you see is what you get. It's showing how much force is coming through this. Like if you were looking at a wiring diagram for a house and you were saying, oh, this has 120 volts and it can handle this many amps, that's a fact. That's how much voltage, how many amps, etc. can go through those wires, etc. What kind of devices can you plug in? That's exactly what we're seeing here. We do not use a subjective evaluation. We don't say, well, the way I look at it. No, it doesn't matter the way you look at it. It's a wiring diagram. We just look at it. So if there's no line connected, there's no connection. You might say, well, but the other ones are there. No. You see wires here, you see wires here. You can look at these lines being like wires, energetically connecting things. None here, so it's 2 overlapping patterns, both involving Mercury-Uranus. Wow. 3-planet patterns are powerful, especially if they're symmetrical, especially if the lines are thick. We have 2 of them, they're both symmetrical. Mercury is symmetrically in between Jupiter and Uranus. Mars is symmetrically in between Mercury and Uranus. This is extreme. You're not going to find many people with an 11 vibration chart with Uranus this active. This is very unusual. Not like, I don't know, like configuration like this may be like 1 out of 20 people or so on. It's hard to put an exact number on it, but this is rare. What it means, the Mercury-Jupiter-Uranus, according to our understanding of how these planets combine together through decades of using these ideas, is that it's wildly exuberant and enthusiastic about discoveries, possibilities, and opportunities. That's what this energy means. Jupiter is big, Jupiter-Uranus is buoyant, Mercury is connecting and associating ideas. This is very exuberant, enthusiastic about discovery. It's an 11 vibration, new. 11 vibration is about whatever is new and moving and dynamic. It's unstable. So there's a buoyant, optimistic, excitable nature. Not very well grounded, like just looking to the stars, you might say. Like looking at the end of the rainbow, just this hopeful, joyous, well, not necessarily joyous, because 11 vibration tends to be edgy. It's restless, seeking. And then the Mercury-Mars-Uranus is impatient to learn and understand how things work. Now, these specific interpretations are based on massive amounts of research of many kinds, but this is how we would interpret it. From a very strict point of view, without even interpretation, just saying, what is the formula that makes a person vulnerable to bipolar disorder? It's simply Uranus making hard aspects, or 11 times 11 aspects. We sometimes call that an exponential vibration, where you multiply the number by itself, or you can call it a directly fractal, but we call it exponential. So a hard aspect, or an octave of 11, or an exponential of 11, like 11 times 11, that's the formula. Then you can go into a finer level of exactly how that's functioning for that person, and exactly what the person needs to do. So for this person, understanding, discovery, these things, if the person can get involved in that in a positive way, it would help heal the bipolar disorder. Oh my God. So there's so much work we need to do from here. Not only validate the formula through additional research, but for therapists to be applying these ideas and see if they're useful and helpful. And my colleague, Giselle Terry, that I did this research with, who is the marriage and family therapist and was working with the ideas with clients, tremendously helpful, tremendously insightful. And I've had people just come up to me and say, oh, my son, my daughter, my spouse, or myself, I have bipolar disorder. Could you please look at the chart? I'll pull up the 7 vibe, the 11 vibe, the 13 vibe. I'll explain what's there, and it's very, very moving. Now, that's anecdotal evidence, but in an evidence-based practice, we take the data and we apply it to real people. If we take the data and we apply it in real situations and it's not helping, we lose confidence. So in psychology, if you go to the American Psychological Association website, for example, they talk about how the psychology is evidence-based, and that involves data analysis and applying the ideas in a real-life context. So we're following the principles of an evidence-based practice. When we get the data, we apply it. This is different from the more old-school way of just approaching it as a binary, can you prove, and can you validate it? What we're doing is we're building models, working with them in many ways to make sure they're consistent, elegant, applying them, make sure all of these things are working together. That's how an evidence-based practice works in the 21st century. And what we have here at the bottom of this slide is these things are called tree diagrams. It's showing that Mercury is opposition to Jupiter-Uranus midpoint. So this Mercury here, squared to Jupiter and Uranus, is at the center point, at the midpoint, with a 1 degree 13-minute orb. That's weak. So actually, this midpoint structure is not adding very much. We already have the solid aspects. If midpoint structures are strong, it adds tremendously more power. And the Mars at Mercury-Uranus, this Mars opposite Mercury-Uranus, 59 minutes. So it's there. It's adding a little bit more to what is already a powerful pattern. And then we have Pluto opposition Mars-Uranus. Whoa, there's another planet. There's a 5th planet gets involved. Pluto over here is opposition to Mars-Uranus midpoint. And you see this dashed red line connecting Mars and Pluto. This thin line means this is a weak aspect. And Pluto is at the midpoint 21 minutes. Oh my God. That sends this whole planetary configuration through the roof. This alone, it is so extreme. If I have a client with a configuration like this, I'm very concerned. I'm very interested right off the bat. What do you do with this explosive energy? You have this very spontaneous, improvisational, and explosive. Pluto at Mars, Uranus, the way we interpret that is it's explosive. So possibly martial arts, possibly some daring activity, or sometimes it's not physical, but the person is taking on risky challenges, things that require power and force and spontaneity, a lot of energy. So if the person doesn't do that well, it's going to come out in a more dysfunctional manner. Bottom line, this is an extreme 11 vibration that can make the person, make their mind spin out of control. And in part 1 of the series, I listed the symptoms of bipolar disorder. You can go back and watch that and capture the screens about what the symptoms are. The racing thoughts, the erratic behavior, things like spending sprees, etc. Things like the person just goes overboard. That's exactly what this configuration is telling us. All of that. The Pluto at Mars, Uranus, all of this. I mean, that's what the person's inclined to. Does it need to be negative? No. But the person needs to do something. It's not going to take care of itself by not taking action. The person needs to express these things, get involved, get engaged in some activity that's constructive. That's the therapy. That's how we heal. That's how we move forward. What's so exciting to me in these developments, in these discoveries, is not only that we're finding the formula, but how extremely helpful and useful it is. That's even more exciting, that we directly see how we can use these things. We have a long ways to go. We need dozens or hundreds of therapists applying it. We need more research, but we are already at a state where we have a very solid model, very good confidence that it works, and when we apply it, appearing to be useful. So this is exciting. The doors are opening. It's not so much about whether we know something. We don't know anything in psychology or even medicine. We have confidence levels. We build models. And starting from nowhere and building a solid, consistent model that's useful in application, that's producing statistical significance when we test with new data or similar effect sizes and so on, all of the components are there. The elegance, the application, the effect sizes, all in a positive direction. Okay, so that's an example of the 11 vibration. So I'm going to pick up with this in the next video. This is a good stopping point. I'm at 34 minutes. I'd like to stop after about a half hour because we're transitioning to the next part, the next planetary configuration, which is the grandiosity. So we're going to talk about this grandiosity as another one of the components. So we now understand two of them, the 7 vibration and the 11 vibration. In a future video in this series of videos, I'm going to give you the exact details, the exact aspects, the exact planets. But first I want you to appreciate the concepts, appreciate the overall view of what we're talking about. And then later we can dot the I's and cross the T's about every little detail of what this formula is. And that formula will be improved and modified over time. I don't think it will be ever erased. The fundamental formula appears to be working. Okay, so let's stop here and we'll pick up with this slide and get into the third configuration, the grandiosity configuration. We want to give names to these. We can call it the introversion configuration, the impulse control configuration, lack of impulse control configuration, and the grandiosity configuration, just to give names to them. Or we can just call them the 7 vibe, the 11 vibe, 13 vibe. Or we could say the Saturn 7, the Uranus 11, and we're going to see it's Jupiter 13. Okay, we're going to get to that next video. We're going to stop here, and we'll pick up with that in the third video. Thank you very much for watching this and participating in this. God bless. Namaste.